Shalom, beloved. My name is Miss Highsmith, and I'm so glad that you've decided to join me here today for the final episode of the APA Apology Response series. For if you were not aware, back in February of 2021, the American Psychological Association, better known as the APA, issued a public apology to individuals and communities of color for the role they played in promoting, perpetuating, and failing to challenge racism, racial discrimination, and human hierarchy in the United States. Beloved, let us now conclude this series and reflect on the impact of these powerful words. Whereas racism harms all people and infects their beliefs, ways of understanding the world, and interpersonal interactions. Close quote. This statement recognizes that racism is not just a societal issue. It is a deeply embedded force that harms individuals psychologically, socially, and emotionally. The damage of racism extends far beyond its systemic presence, impacting the way we see ourselves and others, and distorting our worldviews and affecting how we interact with one another. So let us break down some key points here. Number one, through influence on beliefs, racism plays a significant role in reinforcing harmful stereotypes. These stereotypes shape how individuals perceive themselves and how others perceive them. They often lead to negative self-images and false assumptions about others. Next is through internalized racism. When marginalized individuals internalize negative stereotypes, it affects their self-esteem and worldview. The internalization leads to self-doubt and impedes personal aspirations, as explored by Claude Steele's concept of stereotype threat. Next is through cultural bias. Racism also distorts how we understand and appreciate different cultures. This cultural bias creates prejudice and discrimination, limiting our ability to embrace diversity. Number two, the impact on interpersonal interactions, microaggressions. These are subtle, often unintentional comments or behaviors that dismiss or undermine individuals based on their race. Over time, microaggressions build up, creating an environment of hostility and marginalization. Next is discrimination. Racism manifests in more direct forms of discrimination in everyday interactions, whether at work, in school, or in healthcare. Individuals from marginalized groups are often denied equitable access to opportunities, services, and respect. Number three, impact on health and well-being, psychological stress. The constant exposure to racism leads to chronic stress, contributing to anxiety, depression, and other mental health challenges. The emotional toll of discrimination significantly harms individuals' psychological well-being. Next is health disparities. Racism has a direct impact on physical health. Communities of color suffer from higher rates of chronic conditions like hypertension and heart disease, driven by the compounding stress of discrimination and exclusion. Next is barriers to healthcare. People of color often experience discrimination in medical settings, resulting in poorer healthcare and worse health outcomes. Racism creates a major barrier to receiving fair and effective health care. Number four, educational and professional impacts from educational disparities. Racism contributes to unequal access to quality education. Schools in marginalized communities are often underfunded, limiting resources and opportunities for students to thrive academically. Next, through career advancement. Racism also impacts professional opportunities. Discriminatory practices in hiring, promotions, and workplace dynamics create significant barriers for people of color to advance in their careers. Research shows that individuals with ethnic-sounding names are less likely to be called for interviews than those with white-sounding names. Number 5, systemic impacts institutional racism. Racism is woven into the very fabric of our institutions, affecting how individuals of color are treated within systems like criminal justice, education, and employment. These systems perpetuate inequality and prevent marginalized groups from achieving equity. Next is through broader impacts on society. For racism affects more than just individuals. It influences economic disparities, healthcare outcomes, educational opportunities, and the criminal justice system. These systems of oppression affect all members of society, creating widespread harm and division. Economic inequality. Racism has led to significant disparities in wealth and income. Discriminatory practices in housing, education, and employment prevent people of color from achieving economic equality. The racial wealth gap is vast, with Black and Latino families accumulating far less wealth than white families, which restricts their access to opportunities and resources. Health disparities. Communities of color face much poorer health outcomes, exacerbated by systemic barriers to healthcare. Higher rates of chronic illness and lower life expectancies are directly tied to racism within healthcare systems. Next is educational inequality. Schools in predominantly Black and Latino communities receive fewer resources, leading to an unequal education for students of color. This inequity limits their academic success and future opportunities. Next, through criminal justice disparities. Racism is evident in the criminal justice system, where people of color face disproportionate policing and harsher sentences for similar offenses compared to their white counterparts. Next is through social and political polarization. Racism deepens social and political divisions. The persistence of racial inequality creates unrest, which we've seen in movements like the Black Lives Matter, highlighting racial tensions and calling for systemic change. In summary, racism is an all-encompassing issue that affects every facet of society. It harms the mental and physical well-being of individuals, it distorts perceptions, and it limits opportunities across education, healthcare, and in the workplace. Systemic racism contributes to broader social issues like economic inequality, health disparities, and injustices within the criminal justice system. Racism is not just a challenge for marginalized communities. It's a societal ill that affects all of us. Its impact touches every part of our lives, from how we see ourselves to how we interact with others and how we navigate societal structures. Dismantling racism requires a collective effort to confront these deeply rooted systems of oppression. Beloved, I want to thank you again for joining me in this critical conversation. Remember that dismantling systemic racism requires each of us to examine how it affects our hearts, our minds, and our communities. Let's come together and stand for healing, justice, and true change. Shalom, beloved.